with Week and these great panelists we have today. We have Miss Crystal Patterson from North Miami, a director. We have Miss Christella Miles, a director with Houston, Texas. Sorry about that. We have Mr. Marcus Johnson, Four
Hey
Leaf,
there.
Southern California, and we have the Code Enforcement Man of the Year in South Fulton, Mr. Brian Morris. How you guys doing this morning?
Doing well.
Doing great, doing great.
Well, we're here celebrating Black History Month, but I wanted to also get I wanted to see your side of the story on. Let me say this right. I wanted to get your input and tell us your success stories as a minority in the business the building division and building department of your organization. Miss sorry, Miss Patterson, can you tell us a little bit about your history as a director at North Miami and your success stories coming up as a division
Sure.
manager?
First of all, good afternoon, everyone, and happy Black History Month, first and foremost. It is a pleasure to be with you guys this afternoon, um, and um, and being given the opportunity to kind of share a little bit on my experiences. I would say that for me, I think it's I guess my journey in North Miami has been pretty historic in that I don't know that we've ever had um, a, a minority person run our code division. In addition to that, I don't know that we've ever had a female um, minority run the division or run the department rather, excuse me. So um, I would say that it's been pretty historic for me.
Uh-oh. I think we
Lost.
well, here she is.
Are you able to hear me and see me?
I think we lost you. Sorry about that. Miss Patterson, we are you still there?
I'm here.
Okay, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Sorry, I don't know what happened. But I would say that I spent some time. I've shared this story before. I spent quite a few years in my career as an investigator, doing the boots on the ground type work. I was always very passionate about law enforcement on some level. At one point, I thought I wanted to be a police officer, and then I realized through
Okay. I
it
think
seems like I'm getting like a little bit of an in and out.
yeah, I think we keep losing you. The last part we heard, you wanted to be a police officer at one point.
Yeah. So I would say that, that my journey kind of started there. I was boots on the ground. And then as time would have it, I was able to put myself in position to get into management and leadership. And like I said, it's been a very challenging journey. It's been a very rewarding journey. Um,
Uh-oh. Well, I think we have some technical difficulties. Miss
yeah.
Patterson,
I'm not sure why it's literally just blanking out and coming back on.
all right. Do you want to stand by and get that situated, and we go to the next panelist, or you
Sure,
think you
sure, sure.
okay? Well, I always like to start with ladies first. Miss Christilla Miles, Houston, Texas. I definitely want to hear your story. Um, I see you on a lot of panels, a lot of diverse panels, and we love that in our division. Please tell us about your story, ma'am. How did you get started in code enforcement and come to the come to become one of the leaders, leading forces in women, one of the leading women in this in this profession?
Okay, no problem. Good afternoon, everybody. Hey, you did a
Yes.
wonderful job of announcing my name, Christilla. You did good. It means Christ-like person. So I got a lot to live up to. First of all, that's my mom and my auntie's name. Long life. Hey, I'm blessed. But I want
Yes,
to make a small correction. I am not the director. I'm actually one of two division managers here for Department of Neighborhoods and Protection Services. I got my start back in 95, 96, stomping grounds with the city of Grand Prairie that's in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. At that time, I transitioned from being a senior municipal court clerk at the jail, working at the bond desk, supervising 4 or 5 ladies, dealing with attorneys coming in, trying to make bail and get arraignment for their clients. And so I saw this job with Grand Prairie and said, hey, we need a code enforcement officer. I said, okay, they paying more money. More money, less work. That's why I went. Seriously, this is honest conversation. I said, these people can pay me more money. I have less work to do and less responsibility. At least that's what I thought it was when I got over there. I just saw the dollar signs. So I went over to this department. They put me under the direction of a gentleman named Mike Foreman. Mike Foreman used to run all the salvage yards, him and Joseph Graves, and substandard structures. And so I was like kind of the first female to go up under their guidance. And of course, there was a system in place, quote unquote, good old boy system. You got a woman following you around, and believe me, she don't have any idea how to deal with substandard structures. So at that time, I was learning stuff from him. Me being the person I am, my mother, who she is, she was like, Christilla, you can do anything. She instilled a lot of values in me. She and my dad, Charles Edward, believed that if I wanted to do something, go ahead, baby girl, go on and do it. He said the only thing that you have to worry about is if you didn't do it, if you failed. And so he never viewed it as a failure. He said you made an effort and that you tried. So my story is one of victory, not of failures. So over the years, I've learned a lot of things. I started at the bottom. I'm on my way to the top. I'm not where I want to be right now, but hey, I'm going there. There's a plan in action for me. Everything that I do, I'm intentional. You have to be intentional about the steps you make, about the decisions that you make. So right now is just a milestone. I'm currently the division manager, and I know I have a lot to go. Houston is the 4th largest city in the United States. We got over 2.5 million people that we service. So, of course, you have to have some sense of dealing with people, communication skills. I love people. And if anybody knows me, they know that I'm a realist. I'm going to talk to you. We're going to have a good time, but you're going to do what I ask you to do, because I studied my craft. And so in order for me to study my craft and be good at it, I have to know what I'm doing, exercise it, and also have empathy when I'm dealing with citizens, because I don't want anybody to think that I'm above reproach and that I'm better than them, because I've started from the bottom. I can identify with them and say, hey, you know what? I noticed you got this going on at your property, but guess what? We can work together and come to some resolution. Over the years, during my tenure as a code enforcement officer, I've had the opportunity to supervise animal control, work on a number of boards, be active in Code Enforcement Association of Texas. I currently have a seat at the table with Texas Department of License and Registration. So I have a say-so on how our craft is growing. At times I have to exercise patience because, as a female in this industry, sometimes they can say we can be a bit headstrong. People kind of take us a little different than y'all men. Y'all got all this machoism and, hey, you got all this other stuff going on. But as a woman, sometimes we have to demand that our presence be known and that we are a force to be reckoned with. So my goal and my journey has required me to learn as much as possible. Every day is a learning experience, from basic code to intermediate code to code 2, code 3 to supervisor, and now to the executive level. In this job, you have to love what you do. You have to have a great attitude. You have to come to work with the sense that every day I'm learning. And also doing this journey, it can be very difficult as a woman, because you're dealing with the different classifications of people and the different cultures. And so sometimes when you're dealing with different cultures, they're like, that's a woman. She ain't got no business knowing anything about construction. What's a P-trap? Hey, what's a pier and beam foundation? We don't have any business in the eyes of the general public of knowing certain terminology. So I make it my best to know these things. That way I can sit back sometimes and just say, hey, okay, I'm gonna let you talk for a minute. I've been on occasion where we've been in meetings and I'm the only woman. And I had a gentleman tell one of my coworkers, "Hey, you got the little girl sitting right there with you. Why don't you tell your secretary to take notes?" And so the young man who was in the meeting, he started laughing. He said, "She's not the secretary. She's the boss. That's my boss, man." So, you know, a woman in this profession can face adversity on a different level. You know, when you go out and you go to your construction sites and you get out the car, people normally go straight to the man. They cling to his presence. But as a woman, you know, we have a different way. We're more nurturing. We're able to get more compliance in this area of expertise because guess what? We have a heart for the public. So my journey has been my journey and my journey alone. I've had the influence of some wonderful people. And I tell you, people in the business, I worked with Mr. Bean on several occasions. Cecilia has called me. Celia is wonderful. Got to meet Pete, you know, so me growing as a code enforcement officer daily is a must. It's mandatory. I get to meet wonderful men like you all. I get to meet great gentlemen who back you up and say, "Hey, let's sit down and have a battle of the minds. Let's sit down and brainstorm. Let's do whiteboard sessions. Let's work together and see what we can do to make our community better." So me in the field of code enforcement, it's been a job. Believe me, it's hard sometimes. It's hard because when you're working in local government, you're faced with politics. People view you a certain way when you come in. You see a natural female right here with a short haircut, and I'm confident in my abilities. You know, I don't want people to think that, hey, she's boastful, she's vain, she's arrogant. No, I'm confident because I know what I know and you can't take it from me. I've always had the attitude that if you give me a job to do, I'm not the lady to say, I don't want to do that. That's not in my box. That's not in my job description. Guess what? Miss Chris gonna do it because Miss Chris gonna learn some stuff and she gonna know it. That way, if you step away from it, I'm gonna maximize that opportunity. You're gonna come back and use Miss Chris again. So my journey has been my journey alone. You know, I've been, you know, a lot of people don't discuss religion and politics. Mine is to be faithful, to do the task that's been assigned to my hands and do it to the best of my abilities. I can always tell people this, you know, somebody had to set the foundation for me. My job when that foundation has been set is guess what? To make that grow and multiply. Just like I'm setting the foundation for others. So if I set that foundation, I expect you to go in and make it great. So any opportunity that I get working in this field, anything that I put my hands to, I try my best to make sure that I make it work, I make it great, and I make it where the next person that comes behind me can do it too and put their own taste or their own twist to it. So, you know, code enforcement can be very difficult. It can be a difficult job, but it doesn't have to be. If we do it because we love it, we're dealing with the community, we have empathy, and you know your craft. So I don't want to take too much time today because y'all know this is a short stream that we're doing, celebrating Black History Month. Like I said, there's others who've been before me who did it, and they paved the way for me. I'm grateful. We're talking about like your Bill Hills in the city of Grand Prairie, who was one of the founding fathers for Code Enforcement Association. We're talking about your Vanette Murphy, who was one of the first Black female supervisors over in Grand Prairie in that Code Enforcement Division. So these are the type of people that, you know, I adhere to, that I speak to. You know, they made others great off of their back. So I'm hoping that one day I'm able to leave a legacy where the people that I mentor now or the people that I come in contact with, I leave a lasting impression on them. If anybody's ever read my business cards always say I'm striving for excellence. I don't ever want to be me. Everybody know what me is, mediocre. Why be mediocre? Let somebody else have that job. Y'all be excellent. So that's kind of my spiel.
Ms. Miles, we really appreciate that. You are excellent, especially you said a mouthful. You're leaving a legacy for the women to follow in your path. I mean, you definitely are leaving a legacy. We definitely appreciate you. Ms. Patterson, are you still there? Ms. Patterson? I think Ms. Patterson may be having some technical difficulties. We're going to move on to Mr. Brian Morris, City of South Fulton. How are you today, sir?
Yes, sir. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir, man. I think I was on mute. I was a little difficulties on my end.
Okay.
Tell us about
Perfect.
tell us a little bit about Mr. Brian Morris and how did you become the you have interim director, but brother, you the director of
Yes,
code enforcement in the city
yes,
of
sir.
South Fulton. So I'm
Yes,
gonna
sir.
give you that direct. I'm gonna give you that
We go.
title,
Thank you, sir. We gonna speak it into existence
Yeah.
as if it were, and I think we'll go with that. So first of all, man, I wanna take the time to appreciate everybody here, and appreciate Four Leaf and you, Anthony and Pete, for putting this together, because it's very, very important that we, as we were saying a little bit prior to the show, is that nobody understands code enforcement is other than people that have done it. And so to be even in a virtual room of people that have accomplished so much in the field, and people that I look up to, and that are just representing it so well, it's just a blessing to be able to do that. So I tell Pete all the time that him and some of the Marcus Kellums and the Kelvin Beans, and you guys are like the kind of like the Mount Rushmore when it comes to this code enforcement thing, man. And so I'll just be kind of brief and kind of sum up how I got into it. To be quite honest with y'all, just similar to Miss Miles, I fell into it by accident. So I was in business, I was an entrepreneur. I was in all types of different, real estate and construction and management. And I got, I was affected negatively by the real estate crash in 07, 08. And frankly, I needed a job. Just got married, I had a family on the way. So I needed a job. And code enforcement was, something that kind of fit with my skill set. And it was meant to be for me something temporary, something I could just kind of get into and stabilize and, get my family going and things like that. And what it materialized into about a year or two in, I just started to get a passion for it. I started to see a purpose in it. I saw Marcus Kellum do a couple of trainings down in Gates. And this is the importance. We're talking about Black history. This is the importance of representation, because what I saw when I saw people like him was, I said, well, look, that's how it's done. From a professional standpoint, being able to articulate the codes and the laws and the different ordinances, and to be able to have the different skill sets that it takes to do this job. This is one of the most demanding, what I found out through my course of time, is this is one of the most demanding and skill-based professions out there, because you got to wear many different hats. You got to know zoning, you have to know legal, police, fire, engineering, public works. You have to deal with all of these different facets of government, right? And that's just at work. But when you're out in those streets, as y'all see me, we right here, South Fulton, with city of Atlanta. Y'all see that Falcons flag flying proudly behind me. But when we out here in these streets, we have to be guidance counselor. We have to be, friend. We have to be the enforcer, at times. Ms. Miles mentioned you have to have that empathy when I'm dealing with my aunties and my grandmothers out here in these streets. That it's different, But when I'm dealing with somebody that may be of a different background, we have to bring a different element to it. So you have to wear so many different hats and be so versatile in order to get this done. And not to mention the political aspect of it, because code enforcement is very political. I do want to. I had this thought the other day, and I've often talked to my team about this, is that while we're talking about Black history, I often look at code enforcement as enduring the same types of struggles in a sense. And what I mean by that is that many times we are put on a different level than different departments, whether it's police, fire, public works. It's kind of, you give it to code, and we end up taking a lot of heat and a lot of issues and a lot of assignments. But oftentimes that respect is not reciprocated to the level of work that we do. Oftentimes, thankfully, in the city of South Fulton, I feel different. It's one of the cities that does recognize and gives us the resources that we need, but that's not often the case. So many times code enforcement is like a second-class citizen when it comes to even in our own cities and our own organizations around the state and around the country, we're fighting for those. We have to fight twice as hard, work twice as hard to get half of the resources and in some cases the respect. So I just see those two similarities when it comes to code, and what we're here to represent right now is, minorities, definitely for the African Americans, and for the female minorities as well, that have to fight that fight twice. So hats off to y'all, and hats off to us for just continuing to shine a positive light on this great profession.
Appreciate that, Brian. I totally agree. We deal with so many different things in the community, and the diverse communities, etc. And training is needed as well with that. I mean, it's definitely, you said a mouthful with that, man. We're given so many different tasks, and sometimes you have to be well versed to deal with them. A lot of inspectors are not trained in Spanish, but I remember when I was at the city of South Fulton, man, we came up with the inspection sheet that had Spanish on it. So a lot of times when you're dealing with different communities, man, if you have to be well trained, like you said, Brian. Definitely. We're going to try to get Miss Patterson back on. I think she's having some difficulties, but we're going to give a break for her. Next, we have big man in charge, our boss, last but not least, Mr. Marcus Johnson with 4 Leaf.
Man, give me all kinds of big ups, but I just kind of just walk around and show up and hold the coffee cup, really.
No, sir. Being a young professional, how did you become in your seat?
I kind of like everybody, we just kind of fell into it. Out of high school, I had kind of my father actually was like, "Hey, why don't you become a building inspector?" And I was like, "I don't know what that is. I don't know what it means, but okay." So grab the books. Right out of high school, it's easy to study for a test. Study for some tests. Got some certs. Great. What else do I do? Started applying at cities. Competitor hired me. Said, "Hey, why don't you become a permit tech?" All right, I don't know what that is, but I'll do it. Send me to a city, sitting down, and they go, "Since you got certs, you get to answer code questions for everybody, for the plan checkers, the inspectors." And they put a little metal stool up front and said, "Here's the code books. Answer some questions." I barely knew it was in the book, and I didn't know what a P-trap was. All I know is the book says it's this. I've never seen it in real life. I had very little construction experience, but I remember seeing correction notices and the way different people and experience. Some people are electricians and they have a little bit tighter information. So seeing that different information from all kinds of different inspectors, plans examiners, and having an answer for them actually helped me out a whole lot. And I sat at that stool for a good 3 or 4 years, not even being in the field. And finally they go, you're an inspector, you get to go in the field. Happiest day, one of the happiest days of my life. I'm like, get out of the office. They send me to some sites, and it's a different ball game out there in the world, man. When you get out there, it's like, whoa, you gotta know what you're looking at, but you also need to know how to administer the code. Nowadays, I say there's very little black and white in the code. If you want to get pretty far in this career, you have to know how to administer the gray. You need to know how to administer the exceptions. You need to know how to get to a yes answer and still getting your code compliance. Like everybody else on the panel said, it's like you hold a lot of different hats. When you go to somebody's house, you have to have the right personality, the right words, the right approach to help that person. Because ultimately we're there to help them. We're not there to throw them out of their house. We're not there to make their life any harder than it is. We're here to help. We're here to help. There's some type of issue. We're trying to get to getting them to resolve it. And like one of the other panelists said, you're a counselor. You can be a financial advisor. Sometimes you're even a contractor trying to figure out how to make this thing work. Like, hey, the cheapest thing is knock this down. The easiest thing is go get X, Y, and Z. So that's my kind of trajectory. I just took whoever wanted to teach me anything. I met a lot of good people in the industry. If anybody wanted to teach me anything, I didn't care what it was. If somebody wanted to teach me how to look at a pool plan, I was a sponge, and I've kind of continued my career that way. I've learned a lot of tasks that people don't want to do, and that's kind of how I ended up doing some code enforcement. That's how I ended up doing mobile home enforcements and other stuff. Is nobody wanted to do it, but hey, I'll do it. It's something to do, and I just like learning. So the trajectory, I moved up and down the state of California. Then I got a little bored in the jurisdictions, and that's kind of when I hooked up with 4Leaf and some of the consultants about like, hey, you have an ability to look at kind of bigger projects, have a bigger audience, and since then I've loved every minute of it. I have the platforms and the abilities to hire, bring in people, and it's nice to be able to give people opportunities. I know in my personal experience, I've been able to, you meet people and they have the right intangibles. Maybe they don't know code. Maybe they've never been an inspector, but they have the right personality traits. They're eager to learn. They have all the intangibles. It's just putting a little bit of time and investment into it. And that's one thing that has always been super important to me is there's a lot of people out there. There's a lot of circumstances out there, but everybody just needs a little bit of sometimes a nudge. Like, hey, I know a lot of inspectors that maybe have a little bit of issue taking the test, and they you fail an ICC test, and people feel it sucks. But I tell them, hey, nobody asks how many times you took the test. They just ask you if you have your certification. And I think in our office, I know Anthony's seen it. I posted my plan check certs a couple times where I had to take it a couple times, and I go, don't be discouraged. It happens. I go, it's a revolving set of information, but it's part of the process to get where you need to go. And so just now I'm really happy that I'm able to help people kind of further their careers. I have the platform to do it now. And it's like bringing Anthony, bringing Pete on, and I really saw the need for the code enforcement realm to be kind of highlighted. It's like y'all said, we're all like the stepchildren. We take whatever weird program, whatever political thing of the day is, smoking ordinances or whatever. Hey, you know what? Code enforcement will do it. Most of the time we go, I have no clue how to get there, but we'll figure it out. Getting the resources is another issue, but I think with us highlighting the profession, highlighting the people in the industry, and it's nice to see people across the nation that are doing good things, that are out there making a difference. It's one thing that just like it brings joy to my heart. I know early on in my career, I went to when you go to a lot of training, and especially down here, I didn't see too many people that look like me at the trainings. I didn't see people in my age range. So I remember going, I don't necessarily know if this is maybe for me. I like what I do. I like interacting with people. I like helping people, but I didn't know if it was for me. But then like boards like this, panels like this, where you can see people everywhere that are doing it, is awesome. And I'm glad that Anthony and Pete kind of put this together so we can kind of highlight the successes. We all hear about the bad things, and I know we'll probably talk about some of our struggles, but it's also great to hear that you can make it, you can get through it, you can get to where you need to be, and there is success out there.
I'm muted. Sorry. Appreciate that, Marcus, for that. I don't know you guys can hear me, but I appreciate that, sir. That was awesome. You definitely inspire us all in your role, and thank you for giving us this platform to celebrate Black History Month in our profession. Let me ask you guys a question, Ms. Miles. As a female in this profession, how do you strive to bring more females on in the profession, or not just females, but how do you guys strive to diversity in your division?
The 80 some odd different cultures that we normally deal with here. In order to maintain the diversity, we look for the best qualified. You know, that's what I always look for. Like yesterday, I was conducting interviews for a supervisor. We need 3 new supervisors. Normally, what I do is look for who's the best qualified, who is a good fit for our organization, who's teachable. You know, sometimes you got people with all these certifications under their belts and they have a negative attitude, or they got all these degrees and don't have any common sense, and they're not a good fit based on their personality. So I always take that in consideration when we are looking for new applicants or new talent. That's what I call it, new talent. You know, I look for people who think outside the box, who's not afraid to step outside of that box and say, you know what? This is going to be great. I know this is your normal process. Let me find out what your past history and your best practices were, and let me help you be great. I look for unselfish people, you know, to provide diversity. Anytime you're in a room with people and everybody thinks the same, guess what? You're not going to grow. I need somebody who is a little bit of what we want to call a Hellcat, who gonna ruffle our feathers and make us feel a little bit uncomfortable at times, and be the devil's advocate so that we can continue to grow. So me, diversity is a big thing, because I feel like even though we don't always look alike and we don't always think alike, we do have value, and you bringing that to the table is just going to make us a better organization. So to me, diversity is a must. We have to be open-minded. We have to understand the other person's culture and their backgrounds, and we have to be able to surrender to that so that we can continue in our process.
Thank you. Ms. Patterson, are you there? Okay, she's still.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. Gotcha.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, you know what? Before I even start, I want to just say my colleagues on the panel mentioned a whole lot of amazing characteristics and traits you need to have to be in code enforcement. I add adaptability to that list because of my technical issues today. You know, I literally didn't anticipate having these challenges, but I appreciate the us being all of it. But as to not, you know, just my portion of it, I wanted to just kind of continue to finish up what my journey in the industry has been like in terms of diversity and inclusion. I think it's important to know, left off at prior to my technical issues, was that you know, what my specific journey like. I much like everyone else mentioned, climbed through hoops. Like everyone else, desire for law enforcement. I didn't really know much about code enforcement. However, despite being in the industry, serving in a different capacity, I eventually learned and became more familiar with what the role was, and recognized that you know, my desire really there. But to be more specific in terms of you know, diversity and inclusion, making a point and expressing some thought around you know, being the first minority in my jurisdiction, as well as the first woman to run a code enforcement department in my jurisdiction. And I think that it's really, really important, because I can recall times where people would ask questions like, do you really want to do this? Are you, like, what is you in this? Like, I recall, you know, my male counterparts stunned and surprised, and oftentimes taken back that I had this desire to, you know, fill the role that I currently fill. And I think that, you know, there is where, you know, there's a beauty in the struggle, there's certainly struggle when you're trying to come into, you know, go up the ropes, and specifically as a woman, and, you know, more so as a female. As a female, as a minority. And so I definitely wanted to make mention of that. I would say that, you know, diversity, you know, my jurisdiction is a heavily populated immigrant community. We do have, you know, both, you know, kind of all walks of life, but we do heavy immigrant population, excuse me. may not know, but as background would have it, I am of Haitian American descent, and the community that I serve is of Haitian culture. And so even in with that said, it's powerful to me to be able to serve a community in which I've grown up in, and that I've been able to, resources and knowledge that I have in my capacity, in my official capacity, able to genuinely serve. I recognize that as a public service, our number one priority is service. And as the head of the, I recognize that has become even more of my role. Recognizing, identifying, we're not filling in the gap, where we're not, operationally successful at meeting the needs of those that are underserved and underprivileged. Oftentimes there's times where we run into single moms and, different situations that affect you differently. You meet them, when you meet the person out in the field and serving. I think Ms. Miles was mentioning, to, the men and the different needs of the community. I recognize where we may need to adjust our process and our operation in order to be of best service to the people that we serve in our community. So all that said, I just wanted to kind of spend some time on that particular question. I prolong it. I'm sure there's some other interesting questions, but I did definitely want to expand a little bit more on what my journey has looked like.
Thank you, Ms. Patterson. I wanted to ask Mr. Johnson, what communities have you impacted? What diverse communities have you worked in and impacted in your role?
All kinds. I think probably the biggest impact is in some of the communities where we do the disaster recovery. One of the probably biggest ones, or at least for me, was the town of Paradise. Definitely don't meet the demographic when I got up there, but a very welcoming community, very, very happy to have the help. And I met a lot of people that I don't think I would have normally met. Different views of life, different ways of life, but they all opened up really warmly, really accepting of everything that we had to offer, and they understood that we were there to help. I think that's kind of where I see the biggest help in just the normal communities we work with, and some of the certain programs like the mobile home parks. You get to meet a really diverse population, and trying to figure out how to help them. Everybody just trying to do best for their family. That's kind of the number one thing you see when you knock on somebody's door. It's like, hey, what's this? Hey, we need the space. There's 6 people in this house. I get it. Let's try not to be too intrusive. Let's try not to be let's try everything not to knock this thing down and have all this for naught. So I just think being able to get in the communities and outreach and talk to the people, it's really the impactful part of it.
Yes, thank you. Definitely, I totally agree. We had a comment from a LinkedIn user. The benefits of having a diverse workforce are far-reaching and positively impact the entire community. How do you feel about that, Brian? Being in a heavily African American community, being that I know a lot about South Fulton, how does it benefit you having a let me say this, primarily African American staff? How does that help you positively and negatively dealing with your community?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm a firm believer that, when it comes to policing, when it comes to staffing in general, that, you want to have your staff reflect the people that they are serving in most cases, whether that's by gender, by race, demographics, and things like that. So you mentioned the fact that, we are a predominantly Black city. Fun fact, we are actually the most heavily concentrated African American population in the country. Our city of South Fulton, which is 92 to 93% African American. That's the highest concentration of any city in America for a city this size of 108,000. So our staff reflects that. And most of the applicants we get is not by choice, it's just the applicants that we get tend to come from this area. People say you have Atlanta and then you have Georgia. So Atlanta, the demographics are quite different than Georgia, which is when you get outside of, the metro Atlanta area. So our workforce reflects that. As far as the male to female ratio, we are not by design, but we're about 50-50. So we have a staff of 21, and I think we have 12, including admin staff, and we have 12 female and 9 male. And to Ms. Miles' point earlier, some of the best officers, I got some good guys too, they're great, but some of our best officers and the most well-rounded and effective are some of the female officers that we have. Those are some of the go-getters, and they're able to be empathetic and to have that great skill set. So, it's very important to have that balance in everything. We have to have balance. We can't be too, as men, we can be too. I can't. It can be my way or the highway in some cases. If we don't develop that empathetic, nature within us, it can be compliance or else. So they help me to keep me balanced and say, well, hey, look, we need to have a softer approach. We need to, sometimes have a different approach in certain situations. So in that way, I think we keep our diversity at a high level and just making sure that everybody is heard. I saw a quote somebody put in there from Ruth Bader Ginsburg that said, women should be everywhere that decisions are made. And that is true, because that voice has to be reflected. It has to be reflected in order to have good balance and making sure that we're being equal and fair. So.
I totally agree. Well said, man. I definitely well said. Yesterday we spoke on racial disparities and, us being all African Americans. I'm sure we all dealt with that. Now, can you guys tell me, and anybody can speak on this, it's just a question for anybody. Tell me about a time that you guys dealt with some racial disparity, and how did you deal with it?
So if jump in, can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes,
okay. Okay, awesome. If I could just jump in and answer that first, if it's okay. I've actually encountered what I would consider racial disparity. And I'd speak to that from as being a Black woman and as a Black person and a woman again. I initially wanted to start to advance my career in the industry, and I remember my community. There were questions about about how I was able to advance and what types of things, and my character was called into question, and my morale was called into question. Though none of those lines were never crossed or breached, and I moved and advanced myself in the most ethical way possible. I experienced rumors and just some of the most I would say just really disgusting remarks and comments and things that would come my way, and I say that, and that was years ago, but I recognize that adversity breeds character. Some of the same individuals that that had things to say back in the beginnings of my career are now some of the closest people to me. Interestingly, are some of the people that respect my role and my current position. And so, I would just certainly encourage those that that find themselves dealing with any adversity as it relates to either race or gender, to just keep pushing along. The line of work that we're in is definitely challenging in that there are always always going to be naysayers. The politics get extremely challenging, but just push through. And that would just be my contribution to that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Miles, you are currently on the Women's Leaders and Code Enforcement Board, correct?
Yes.
I think I'm having some difficulties. Can you hear me, Ms. Miles?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you. Yes.
I love the group. A little bit about that. I know this is a Women Leaders in Code Enforcement movement. I know it's been about 2 years. You guys have a conference coming up. Tell us about how this was put together and how you guys came about with this diverse group of women.
Well, actually, I can tell you just a little bit, not too much about it. It's actually Women Leading Code Enforcement. Miss Cecilia, Sabella, and Pete got together on this. Cece is a movement in the industry. I tell you, that lady is a go-getter. She's a very ethical and hardworking young lady. She reached out to a bunch of ladies, and said, hey, we need to get together and tell our story. What's going on? How are we making it to the top? How are we promoting women in this profession? She knew a lot of women in the industry who were experiencing, like you said, racial disparity in the organization. And she's a Hispanic lady, homegrown, and she'll tell you her whole story about how she works her way up to the top. She's currently still growing. She just received a new position just recently. We gave her accolades on that. So she thought it would be a good idea to bring together women across the United States and be able to tell their stories about how we have developed in the industry. This is going to be the second annual conference. I believe last year we did a virtual conference. I was one of their presenters during this time. And so next month, the March 23rd through the 27th, we'll be in Santa Rosa, California. I'm currently opening up the ceremony as the keynote speaker. And she wanted women with similar professions to come together, tell their stories, continue their education, and grow and encourage each other to continue to grow. So this is like a really positive movement that she has going on. There were a couple of men that attended some of our classes virtually, and it was because of the COVID, and so much stuff has been going on. Pete Roque has been a driving force behind the technology about this. He made us all look wonderful. I was like, come on, Pete, do your thing, man. Doctor it up. You know how to do the superstars on TV. Go ahead and photobomb and Photoshop and make all of us ladies look good. So Pete has been super awesome with that. Marcus Kellum. You got great men who are pushing wonderful women to be successful. So this is a wonderful opportunity for all of us to come together to encourage each other to continue growing. Miss Crystal was there as well virtually last year. Much kudos to her. She's still growing, climbing up the chain. So we definitely are working together so that we can present a positive image to this world to show, hey, we are relevant. We make a difference in the workforce. And so that's the goal. Like I said, the goal for the conference coming up is be bold, be fierce. Hey, and we are ready. We are ready. Be bold, be brave, and be fierce.
I love it. I love it. We are definitely, I'm excited about it. I didn't know it was, so me and Cam attend, right?
Yes, you guys can come. We let a few people
sure.
in.
I don't want to come to a conference and look crazy now.
We're not gonna male bash you. We're not male bashing. I'm serious. We're not male bashing because a lot of us, my assistant director here in the city of Houston, Director Harris, he is the driving force behind me. This man has set high expectations, and believe me, I try to always exceed it. Of course, our director is a female, Takasha Francis, a force to be reckoned with, but we are not male bashing. A lot of men in our profession, they encourage us, they teach us, we learn from them, we do a exchange of communication with these guys. So it works out for everybody. We all benefit. So we welcome men to come to the conference, because also it teaches you guys how to treat us ladies. You teach people how to treat you. I tell you that all the time. I'm gonna teach you how to treat me. So definitely that'll help you wise up in your communication skills when you at work working with some of us headstrong ladies. So hey, it's a great organization. I tell you, it's wonderful. And Miss Crystal, she can definitely attest to that.
We're excited. I'm definitely going to attend. Now, one thing I was going to ask though on the virtual is it? Do you guys have a in person one coming as well? This is an in
Yes,
person conference as well, right?
this
Was
is
it
it's a hybrid conference.
Okay, we're definitely going to support you guys. Having women leaders in the code enforcement, and we support you guys wholeheartedly here in my organization. So we appreciate you, Miss Patterson. Are you still there? She left off. Okay, she's still there. Well, hey, we have about 10 minutes to go, and I'm not gonna water it down, but I do have some more things to talk about. I wanted to know, in our boards and our associations, how can we bring this to their attention without ruffling feathers? I know we all deal with issues. The women leaders in code enforcement, the other organizations that are for change, but on this panel, what do you see us doing to bring about change on the executive level, as far as diversity and equity and inclusion? And I'm actually going to ask Mr. Johnson that, Mr. Marcus Johnson, what do you think we could do on the executive at this level to bring it to the executive level without ruffling feathers?
Honestly, it's I think just more outreach in different communities. Most people don't even know this is a profession or something that they can do. It's something like all our stories, we all kind of fall into it. And it's really getting out and kind of letting them know what we do, how we do it, and letting people see that there is this option out there for a good career. And I think that's kind of one of the biggest things that we just got to get out. We got to get out there and get in front of as many people as possible and let them know that this is a viable option. And here are kind of some of the key things that you would need to be fruitful in this industry.
Perfect. How do you feel about that, Ms. Miles? What do you think we can contribute, I guess, on the executive level to bring this to the light of, there are some issues, there's some good and bad things we're doing. But what do you think, without ruffling some feathers, how can we bring this to the forefront of the executive level, that diversity, inclusion, equity is needed? I think we got to pause that. Was it a pause, Ms. Miles? Uh-oh. All right. Brian, how do you feel about that? How would you bring that to the forefront of the executive levels of that? We need diversity, equity, and inclusion without ruffling feathers.
Right, Anthony. I think the way you put it, I like the way you put it without ruffling feathers. How do we do that? I think what Mr. Johnson said, it's about exposure. At the end of the day, I never knew before I got into this. And many people don't have a clue as to what code enforcement is. They don't know. So I try to explain it in a few different ways. I say, hey, look, we're the property police, or we're the HOA, of the city, of the jurisdiction of the municipality. So people just don't know. So we want to get into the schools. We're doing outreach into we're kind of branching out beyond just code enforcement. We want to reach out to our senior citizens and find out what their needs are. We have aging populations that they can't afford to get, they can't comply because they can't afford to comply. They don't have money to fix the roof and things like that. So we want to get in front of as many people as possible, different groups. And so I take every meeting, every single meeting, every HOA, every town hall, every meeting I can take, because I think it's that important. I think the work that you guys are doing is that important to just get the word out about what we do, because it's very important. It's very important for our communities to have a strong code enforcement department. I say after you lock up the bad guys, you put out the fires, the next thing people start worrying about is quality of life. Once your health and safety issues are taken care of, the next thing you want to see is, well, I don't want trash on the street. I don't want the tall grass. And I don't want, the junk vehicles. So we're up next after that when it comes to quality of life issues. So, you know, and just last thing I'll say is just exposure is just us seeing us in different places.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't know you can be something until you see somebody else that is doing that work that looks like you. So it's important that they see us out there and you know, just being able to hold our own in these spaces, and for somebody to know that that is a potential career path, that you can do the same thing, and this is what that looks like.
Well said. Totally agree. Ms. Patterson, are you on today? You back on?
I'm here. Um, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
think what everyone said, or what Brian said was definitely, you know, in the right direction. I think what we're doing now is in the right direction. I think what the industry has started to do in the last couple years in terms of, you know, highlighting and outreach and, you know, bringing, you know, folks from different parts of the country together, is all indicative of moving in the right direction. You know, I don't know how we could maybe even potentially consider, you know, some leadership, you know, meetups. I know ACE and some of the other organizations are good about, you know, we do conferences and things of that nature. I think oftentimes what tends to happen is, you know, you're in a silo in your jurisdiction, and unless if you're fortunate to be a part of a big jurisdiction and you've got multiple people at the table, then, you know, like I said, you're fortunate. But when you're in a smaller jurisdiction, sometimes there's resources that you need that it's difficult to get, you know, access to, and you know, sometimes have, you know, the level of staffing that you might need in order to be able to really brainstorm and put together some I guess some practical ways in which to engage and outreach in your community. So I think, you know, maybe even chapter meetings or chapter leadership meetings, not chapter, excuse me, but national leadership meetings, where, you know, maybe, you know, every now and again, quarterly or what have you, where executives can, you know, have a conversation, meet up, you know, kind of toss ideas around, get a feel for what folks are doing, and you know, so that we can kind of streamline and be as effective as possible in our respective areas.
Well said, Ms. Patterson. I totally agree. I definitely totally agree. Now, yesterday, I tasked the panelists with a question: who was Howard P. Grant? Did anybody research that? Let me see if anybody on LinkedIn or online. Well, if you guys don't know, he's actually the first black student to graduate from the University of California, Berkeley, with a Bachelor of Science degree in civil engineering in 1948. That same year, he became the first black member of the first black member of the American Society of Civil Engineers. That's a major accomplishment. 1948 is not that long ago, but I definitely have to represent and give kudos to the first black civil engineer. That would be something closely related to code enforcement, meaning that I don't think any of us are civil engineers, maybe Marcus.
Nah, far from that.
but but I think having the first black civil engineer, and definitely on the West Coast, I give kudos, is a major accomplishment. Um, Next 2 minutes, anybody have anything that they want to put out to the panelists on some great things that's happening in their organization and in their city, that's actually representing diversity, equity, and inclusion? Anybody want to add something to the panel and give kudos to their city? Or Brian?
Yeah, I'd like to give kudos, man, just to again, man, to Four Leaf and you guys for, man, shining this spotlight on this profession. And you know, I love, as we talked before, man, we got a shared history here in this area before Pete and Michael stole you out there to California. But man, I love where we are. I love where we are as a city. We are, you know, very much moving in the right direction. And I'm grateful to be a part of it. So, you know, I appreciate what Crystal mentioned before about doing some leadership and executive meetings. I think that's a great idea to kind of keep some ideas flowing and keep keep this profession moving in the right direction. But thank you guys, man. Thank you for having me.
Hey, man, we appreciate you, man, and I appreciate you for giving me that shout out. I appreciate South Fulton definitely for paving the way for me. I started there in my career 15 years ago, but it was Fulton County.
Yeah.
So I definitely appreciate you guys for lifting me up and putting me in the position that I am right now. And I'm grateful for Forley for having this panel discussion. Is definitely needed. I'm thankful for the chapter. I'm thankful for everybody for putting me in this position and learning over the years. But I think us celebrating Black History Month as minority professionals is a good thing. But I think you bring everybody together, all races. We're a majority, so it wouldn't be a minority. I think putting everybody together in one pot and calling them majority is a good thing. I think what we're doing here is bringing the light to what's needed. Um, Equity, inclusion, and diversity are three things that are needed. And in our division, we definitely, and code enforcement definitely, is shining a light. And I appreciate you guys. Happy Black History Month. I appreciate the panelists. You guys have an awesome day. Be safe out there. And God bless.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you all.